Hey, it's me, the Matrix Refugee, on Monday afternoon, and it's a little warm today, so I got my hair pulled back. And busy day today. I had a dental appointment. I had to have a sealant put on one of my back teeth, so it was a little. I've had it done before, but they have to grind your tooth down a little bit or do something with it before they can put the sealant on. So. And that was just a little bit nerve-wracking because it's, what are you doing there? But fortunately, I have a very kind dentist, or I should say kind and funny dentist, told me in advance what they were going to do. And I mean, it's not my first time doing this, but still, it helps to have them tell you, what they're doing, poking around in there. And he's a very funny fellow. He was talking about, how nice the weather is and how he's had a snowbank at the end of his driveway up until this weekend, and which actually got me chuckling a little bit. And then once he wasn't poking around in my mouth, I said, well, yeah, we had one at the corner of our driveway, and I thought for sure we were going to have it up until May, but that disappeared by, I think it was around Earth Day, finally disappeared. What I didn't tell him was my dad and I had made a bet one week that the snow was going to be melted out of our front yard by, I think it was Monday of that week, and it didn't disappear until like Wednesday, which was Earth Day. So we had snow in the front yard until April 22nd. That's a little, but kind of par of the course for us because we got a lot of trees in our yard, so it's kind of shady. And my mom always makes jokes every winter about us having uh, the Garden of the Selfish Giant, referencing the fairy tale by Oscar Wilde about a selfish giant who won't let the kids play in his beautiful garden, and mysteriously he has snow in his garden until much later than everybody else. In fact, it stays winter in his garden all year round because he's so unkind to the kids and won't let them climb in his trees. If you've not read that fairy tale, which I highly recommend, actually all of Oscar Wilde's fairy tales I highly recommend. They're very interesting. A lot of say a lot of political details in them, and kind of, I wouldn't say a moral to them, but just there's kind of little bits of food for thought in there, little morsels, you know. So that was this morning, and my reward for being a trooper and not getting too in the dentist chair was I went to Panera Bread for the first time and had my lunch there and did some writing. I had one of their lovely turkey cranberry flatbread sandwiches, which was just ooh. Chopped cranberries, and I think there was a little ranch dressing and some kind of fancy lettuce. Might have been spinach leaves. I'm not 100% sure, but ooh, it's different. I liked it. That and some iced chai that kept me going for a couple hours. I actually got 5 pages of writing done in my journal that I've been using right now. I was writing in a dead tree journal for a change, which, something I haven't done as much of lately, at least not in the past few months, but something I needed to get back to because I don't know. It's like sometimes actually writing something out longhand in an actual dead tree paper journal, getting the words on paper, it just feels more organic, and I find it. I can compose in a keyboard, but there's times when you just gotta write things out and just let it flow organically. It's hard to explain unless you've been there. That's like so many other things. Anyway. So I was working on two different stories. One is the Dunwich Romance, or Dunwich Romance rather. I finally have a name for my female protagonist. I decided to name her Ermengarde, after Sweet Ermengarde and the one romance story by H.P. Lovecraft, which he wrote at the ripe old age of 25 after he'd got himself snarled up in a flame war in one of the pulp magazines in their letters to the editor section, where he was grumbling about the sheer number of terribly written romance stories that they kept printing. And some people were agreeing with him, and some people were pretty much telling him to sit down and shut up. Except for a few who found his responses rather intriguing and were like, and were into amateur publishing themselves, and approached him saying, hey, would you like to publish stuff in our amateur magazines? Which is pretty much how he got started publishing. Yes, a flame war got this guy started as a writer. So, never let those flame wars get you, I guess. You never know where they might take you. So anyway, it's one of the, I won't say it's one of the few romance stories that I can, admit to liking without feeling a little embarrassed, but what he basically did with that was he took all the tropes of popular romance stories and kind of turned them on their ear. It's sort of Horatio Alger on crack. It has to be read to be believed. You can easily find it online. A couple of the websites that have his, I won't say his complete stories, but close to complete. There's a few of his that are collaborations that are actually still copyright, and therefore are not, you don't find them reprinted here, there, and everywhere like most of his stuff. But the major stuff you can easily find online. So don't hesitate to Google or Bing that thing. It's worth looking up. It's hilarious. I love it. But anyway, so I decided what the heck, I can't come up, I'm not coming up with a name for this character other than, but so why not pick the most obvious name and just call her Ermengarde? I'm just going to come up with a last name for her, which is probably going to be something or other culled from, probably from another Lovecraft story. Or maybe, snitch the last name of somebody from, some of the Lovecraftian circles I've been hanging around in lately. I hope they don't mind. That was sort of a thing, though, with Howie Phil and his circle of writing friends. They would name characters after each other, and sometimes they would kill off those characters in crazy fashion because they were writing horror stories, so somebody's gonna get killed off. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, there was a mischievous back and forth between Lovecraft and his friend Frank Belknap Law, where they kind of they would create characters based off each other back and forth and keep killing them off. I think this happened 2 or 3 times or something. Somebody is a friend when they create a character and they based off you and they kill them off and it doesn't bother you, because you get the mechanics of your genre, It's a horror story. Bad things are gonna happen to people. Anyway, so no, Ermengarde's not going to get killed off. She's just going to have sad things happen to her. You can't let out too much. Well, I suppose it would be almost 100-year-olds. No, not quite 100-year-old. 70, 80-year-old spoilers. The love of her life winds up dying off. So, anyway, poor Ermengarde. Yep, she manages. She makes a life for herself. It's going to be an interesting life, though. Anyway, so moving right along, there's that story, and the other story. The other story has a strange pedigree to it. It was inspired by some strange writing in the margin of a book that my mother and I are reading right now. Right now, she and I are reading, I believe that it's The Four Cardinal Virtues by Joseph Pieper. A very philosophical work on the nature of the 4 cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. And there was a strange... Obviously, this was somebody's college copy, because there's all kinds of underlinings and highlightings and scribblings in the margins, and in the bottom margin of one page, somebody had written something like, I think it's a good idea if you rehearse what you're planning to do. And it's like, why would somebody write that? There's a story behind that. So that inspired me to write a horror story involving teenagers mucking around with a grimoire. Could be the Necronomicon. I haven't decided which. It could be something else from the list of creepy books that's listed in, I believe it's The Haunter in the Darkness. Where the guy is digging through, I believe it's an old church that had been taken over by creepy cultists, and there's and there's a library of their stuff or a list of books that belong to them or something like that. So the obvious choice is to use the Necronomicon, but to me that I won't exactly say that's been done to death, but that gets used a lot. Let's look at some of the other creepy books on the list. so so their intent is to call up something creepy because, they want this creepy thing to do something for them. Won't let out too much right now because I'm still working on this. And the one guy who's the voice of reason is, at one point scribbles in the margin of a book, that quote that I just used a moment ago. What you're doing, I think you need to rehearse first, or however it was worded. I got it written down. Anyway, so, which might wind up being the title of the story. At least right now, that's the working title of it. And it's one of those, nothing's gonna go wrong, will it? You're right. That's kind of scenario. So it's kind of, I won't exactly say it's Lovecraft meets Evil Dead, but because, well, one thing with Lovecraft stories, even if people are mucking around with things that they shouldn't, there is a part of them that knows that they shouldn't be doing this, but they do it anyway. Whereas, Evil Dead is more kids mucking around with stuff that they shouldn't, and they think nothing could go wrong. There's more of an innocence there with the Evil Dead scenario, I think, than with, the Lovecraftian people mucking around with things that should not be mucked around with, So, and I kind of, there's three main characters in this, and I kind of like them, and I'm hoping this turns out not so bad for them. I don't think it's going to turn out perfectly well, but I hope somebody survives. At least the guy who's the voice of reason, because I don't know. I've gotten rather fond of him. I mean, he's not stopping them from doing this. He's just telling them, you know, I understand your reasoning for this, but you might want to think about this. He's kind of the Freudian superego, whereas the other two represent the ego and the id. The one guy is, ooh, scary book. Let's call up a scary thing and get rid of that one mean guy, or, well, not mean guy, but one guy that, shouldn't be doing things that he is doing because they're horrible and, so these kids' hearts are in the right place. They're just going about it not exactly the best way, but, I almost wouldn't stop them from doing what they're doing. I'm just, I won't say the voice of reason guy is an author insert. Is an author insert because, he's not me. He's different. He's himself. He's better at math than I am. So, it's going to be interesting where these kids wind up. So, that was today. Yesterday was a day of rest, which I kind of need because this is going to be a crazy week. I've got a lot of hours at work, and I've got one other appointment, so this could get a little weird. So, I'm just trying to pace myself. The biggest thing is pacing myself and making sure that I have the proper number of spoons, or, excuse me, wash some of the spoons, unless some of the forks and knives, if necessary. Use the little measuring spoons, even if that means I wind up down to the little quarter teaspoon, as my mother would put it. So yesterday was a day of resting. My folks and I went to Mass in the evening, and my dad and I got asked to bring up the Eucharistic gifts during at the middle of the Mass, which, we're not regulars there, but, I guess to the lady who's the coordinator for that sort of thing, I guess to her and I, we look like, nice people that would be willing to do this, and, sort of the...
I don't exactly say the clean cut, regular Catholic folks, but close enough. Plus, my dad is kind of hands on in his approach to the faith. He's one of the guys who regularly takes up the collection at Mary Immaculate when we're going there regularly. So it's nice to see him involved in things like that.
it's nice to have it's nice that he's found his niche. I mean, I do worry a little bit about, you know, I know we're the masters of our own destiny and our own journey and faith, but sometimes, like, you know, when you love a person, you want them to, you know, you want them to find their place in their spiritual journey. You want them to find their path. So he's found his, and I'm happy for him. So there was that dinner at Cracker Barrel in the evening, and I've been reading my way through Just After Sunset, the other collection of stories by Uncle Stephen that I've been working on lately. I got up to the one that I've really been looking for. I actually saved that one for last. I read a lot of the shorter ones and some of the middle length ones. And irritating pop up. Gone. Better. Anyway. So I finally got up to the one I've been really wanting to read. N is the title of it, which is sort of uh, Uncle Stephen's homage to Arthur Machen's The Great God Pan, which, according to a lot of a lot of horror writers and a lot of horror readers, is one of the creepiest horror stories out there. And I totally agree, because I read it over the late winter, early spring this year, and it's scary because a lot of it is what you don't see. You know, a lot of it is, you know, the corner of the eye sort of thing, or, you know, people talking about the scary thing that happened, and you're not entirely sure all the details. So that kind of makes it creepier. Plus, a lot of it's told in fragments, you know, journal entries and whatnot. So that just makes it even more weird, because that gives you a little more. I wouldn't call it distance, but it's just kind of, ugh, they're not telling everything, are they? You know. So stories like that I really enjoy, because your mind fills in the blanks. And if you have as fertile a mind as mine, your mind is going, you know. I guess I love, you know, you know, show don't tell, you know, or no, or tell don't show, rather. Show don't tell is the other way. That's when the monster winds up getting overexposed, and then by the end of the whatever, you're just, the monster's here again, you know. Whereas if you just imply things, it's like, what's going on? What's going on? You know? It keeps the adrenaline going. So, this one, it's an interesting approach. It's told through, uh, in the form of notes from a counselor, therapist, psychologist person working with a patient who has OCD because of something that he ran across in a field in Maine. So it's kind of going to be interesting. I'm only about a third of the way through it, and what is going on here? This is going to be interesting, because, you know, it's, it's the Lovecraftian, went mad from seeing the spooky thing sort of story, and it's finally taking a clinical approach to the went mad from seeing the spooky thing. Because, okay, Lovecraft was writing at a time when we didn't necessarily have names for all of these things, and it's like, for all these conditions and whatnot. So it's like, okay, what color of madness is it, Being slightly mad myself, it's like, I kind of would like to know what kind of madness we're dealing with here. What is it? Is it psychosis? Is it depression? Is it OCD? Your world got knocked out of whack, so now your mind is trying to come up with ways to keep the world in order again. So it's very interesting. It's very intriguing, and I'm really enjoying this. I'm kind of hoping that somebody makes a movie of it, although that could be a little difficult because, again, this is the showing rather than telling, so could get interesting if somebody were to approach it properly. And Saturday was cleaning day. I know I'm doing this in reverse order. I suppose this is like the reverse order that you find in the way entries get listed in some journal platforms and whatnot, but okay, this is how it's going. Saturday was cleaning day. Did my own cleaning, vacuuming, whatnot. Helped my mother with the spring cleaning, which was washing the walls in the upstairs bathroom, which needed to be done. air out the room a little bit, plus, scrub the floor. Although, that's kind of a tricky room for 2 people to work in, so we kind of took it partly in shifts, plus I did the walls inside the bathtub shower stall area, so that way we were stepping over each other, stepping on each other and banging into each other while we try and scrub things. So that was Saturday. Did some errands that day as well. Got my hours, got a bunch of hours this week, which means that this week is going to be a little wacky on the managing time and energy front, but I'll manage. I usually do. And Friday night, Friday I wound up working in the afternoon and evening, so I got a little tiring, but I managed. I got through it. Oh, Saturday. One other thing from Saturday. One very big thing from Saturday. Don't think I've wanted to do for a while, which was have a flower viewing picnic, which is a very, very popular thing to do in Japan when the flowering cherry trees are in blossom. So our neighbor, or what used to be our neighbor, now it's the house is up for sale and the gent who lived there has moved away. So right now it's the empty house deck on the other side of the brook from us. They have a flowering cherry tree in their yard, and there's nobody there to enjoy it other than people driving by and whatnot. I thought, okay, as long as I'm not bothering anybody, as long as there's nobody here that's checking out the house or whatnot, I figure, okay, stop for a minute, have my green tea under the cherry tree. I took a few pictures, which I'm going to post to Facebook or maybe on LiveJournal or somewhere or other. I'll post those shortly. Yeah, those came out really good, so I'm rather proud of how that came out. Yeah, so running out of things to say, so I'm going to leave it here, and that's the way it was these past few days. I'll tell you more tomorrow or whenever I post the next vlog entry.